So we're going to talk a lot today about the three-way deal that we all saw go down on Friday. We'll talk about the Carolina Hurricanes, the Colorado Avalanche, the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll talk to Eric Tulsky, general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, as we're all trying to get like a vibe check or try to figure out how Tulsky is going to maneuver through the NHL in his rookie season as a general manager. I think we're all trying to get a handle on, okay, how is this guy going to operate? And that was a pretty big piece of the puzzle that we saw on Friday. We'll talk about this from a number of different perspectives. We'll talk about the Carolina side, the Colorado side, the Chicago side as well, how many more shoes there are to drop, what comes next for the Colorado Avalanche. I don't think that they're done by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think Chicago's done by any stretch of the imagination. But also, part of the conversation that I think a lot of people had this weekend revolved around the nature of the salary cap and perhaps the future of the salary cap. Now, as this collective bargaining agreement winds down, I think a lot of us are wondering what hockey is going to look like when there's a new deal between the NHL and the Players Association. Now, I know that people tend to glaze over, so I'll apologize in advance here and try not to make this about as interesting as sorting out one's sock drawer. I know people glaze over when you talk about things like the CBA and salary caps and escrow. But the one thing that I keep coming back to, and I talked to DJ and Pete on What Chaos about this earlier on today, is it not time now that the training wheels came off the salary cap? The salary cap, as we all know, was introduced in 2005, and essentially we've lived with basically the same salary cap with minor adjustments here and there since 2005. Is it time to take the training wheels off? And I think one of the reasons why this conversation is being had around the NHL and a lot of conversations at water coolers and rinks, etc., is a lot of this trade that we saw on Friday was sort of mandated or nudged along quicker because of the salary cap and how much Mikko Rantanen was going to demand if he was going to re-sign with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I know there's been some complications there. Peter Baugh has a piece at The Athletic. If it's not already out, it's on its way out, where Mikko Rantanen said he was prepared to take less than market value to re-sign with the Colorado Avalanche, to which the question then becomes, well, what do you consider market value? We're going to talk about all those things today. We're also going to talk about Michael Andlauer, the owner of the Ottawa Senators. Today at a press conference, announcing a couple of preseason games for the Ottawa Senators at the Videotron Center in Quebec City, musing about perhaps regular season games in Quebec City. And there was a picture of Spartacats with a half jersey of Ottawa Senators and Quebec Nordiques. We should also talk about Logan Thompson signing a contract extension with the Washington Capitals, rather. But the big story of the day is going to continue to be the three-way trade that we saw on Friday. And before we get into the show, I want to leave you with this. I got a text on Friday as I was in Jasper over the weekend. I'll talk about that coming up in a couple of moments. And before I went to bed on Friday, I got a text from someone, and the text went like this. 3 general managers walk into a bar. They all sit down at the same table. One general manager orders a bottle of vodka and starts pouring shots for the other 2 while drinking smart water himself. We'll let you figure out or decide which of the 3 general managers was drinking the smart water. Welcome to the sheet. It's going to be a busy one, going to be a big one. Glad to have you aboard today. No real punchline to that joke. It's just sort of like a setup. You insert your own punchline. Just thought it was a funny text to get before I went to bed. 3 GMs walk into a bar. So how'd you like that one on Friday? A little bit of a shocker. We were all in Jasper. Tyler Yaremchuk and Jay Doughton were on the air and talking about Frank breaking the news and getting all the all the Pacifics, as we say in the Atlantic, or all the specifics of the deal. And it was the buzz all weekend in Jasper, the pond hockey tournament that I was at, and everyone from the nation, well, a lot of people from the Nation Network were at over the weekend. You probably had conversations, all of your buddies, following the chatter online. And, this trade, trades like this don't happen very often. This is one of the best players in the NHL getting moved mid-season. Right, we've seen Joe Thornton was a massive one, the Boston, San Jose, Jack Eichel, Buffalo, Vegas. But these things are rare creatures, and these things don't happen very often. And I think it underscores, in some ways, and I'll ask Eric Tulsky when he joins me here in about 10 minutes or so, the GM of the Carolina Hurricanes. It's very difficult to do deals in season between two teams that are going for it, right? The Avalanche have Stanley Cup aspirations, as do the Carolina Hurricanes. So how do these two teams get together and do deals that strengthen and not weaken their chances of inching closer to the Stanley Cup? And the answer is the broker team. And in this case, it was the Chicago Blackhawks. We've talked a lot about the Vancouver Canucks and their situation with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, and it's the same thing. The Vancouver Canucks are not throwing in the towel. The Vancouver Canucks still have very much eyes on 2025, as do the New York Rangers, as do the New Jersey Devils, as do the Dallas Stars, as do any of the other teams that you've heard rumored with JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. Except the Buffalo Sabres, more on them in a couple of moments. If you're going to get one of these deals done between two teams that have Stanley Cup aspirations, you need a third to help facilitate everything and make things go smoothly. That's one of the things we'll talk to Eric Tulsky about coming up in a couple of moments as well. The other thing about Tulsky, well, let me get the rundown in here first, and then I want to talk to Zach and you guys a little bit more about Eric Tulsky and what to expect in this interview coming up with the headline maker from the weekend. So coming up, Daily Outlines presented by our friends at FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider. And number one is Eric Tulsky, who joins here in a couple of moments, the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes. Number two, we'll be talking about the trade. It's still bleeding into this week, and we'll see what the rest of the week brings, and we'll see what everything brings leading up to trade deadline. The other story I mentioned off the top, Michael Andlauer, owner of the Ottawa Senators, musing about not exhibition games, those are happening, but regular season Ottawa Senators games at the Videotron Center. This after we just saw the Canadian Tire Center filled with Toronto Maple Leafs fans on Saturday. We'll talk about that with Jason York from the Coming In Hot podcast here on the Nation Network and Daily Faceoff, and we'll talk more about Ottawa and Quebec. And I do wonder at what point the Ottawa Senators and the Ottawa Senators owner, specifically Michael Andlauer, backtracks on this one, because this was, as we say in the business, not very well received. Tonight's matchup board is an intriguing one and will feature the return of Connor McDavid and Tyler Myers. They are back in the fold and back playing this evening, and that is your show today. Zach Phillips, our producer and occasional co-host here on the program, who joins me now. Really quickly, I was in Jasper when I first heard the news. It's going to be one of those "where were you when?" As things started to trickle out. We were all wondering about the Taylor Hall side of all of this, and whether that was going to be the entire deal. Where were you when the deal broke out on Friday?
Getting ready to leave to my men's league hockey game. I believe I had just put the dishes in the dishwasher. My phone starts vibrating. I said, what could be going on right now? Pull it out. Went, what? They did what? Who got traded? That's about how that went. And then as soon as I was out the door, it got to hockey, and every single person there was, did you see this? How did that happen?
Well, and as well, too, like part of the remarkable thing about this is, players like Mikko Rantanen, who, let's be honest, like on that food chain there, he's number 3 behind Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. And I think a lot of this is going to revolve around salary cap and AAV, and we'll talk about that in a couple of seconds here. But guys like this don't become available. Guys like, and this is, I know, like Maple Leafs fans are wondering now about Mitch Marner, and the situation is different, and the no move clause, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But players like this just don't become available. Like Mikko Rantanen, even though he's buried behind Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, like he's a future Hall of Fame player, right? Like guys like this do not pop up, and you wonder too. Okay, so what's going to be deployment here? Actually, let's throw. You have the trade board set up before we get to Tulsky. You have the trade board, just so we're all sort of on the same page about this one. We can riff on some of the players here that are involved, and I think getting the short end of the stick here in some ways as well is Taylor Hall, because that's a really nice pickup for the Carolina Hurricanes. And funny too, Tyler Dello is an assistant manager with the Carolina Hurricanes. He was in Edmonton with Taylor Hall, was in New Jersey working there in the analytics department with Taylor Hall, and now Taylor Hall makes his way to the Carolina Hurricanes where Tyler Dello is. Insert your either Stefan Matteau or Matt Cullen joke here, if you wish, for Mike Keenan or Jim Rutherford. Anyhow, so Rantanen and Hall end up with the Carolina Hurricanes. The Avalanche with Martin Necas, Jack Drury, a second and a fourth, and the Blackhawks picking up a third-round draft pick. They retain 50% of the Mikko Rantanen salary here. And I know that Cal Davidson is slings and arrows all weekend long about how that's all that they were able to get, the third-round pick. We're going to do a lot today. We'll see if we get around to the Chicago side of things. But one of the most impressive parts of all of this to me, well, first of all, we all knew that Martin Necas was available. I mean, that had been rumored going back to towards the end of last season, certainly into the summer as well. Sometimes, and this is, like the Zen farmer fable, sometimes you don't know whether something is a blessing or a curse when it does or doesn't happen. And one of the first things that I thought of was, I'm guessing Carolina feels pretty good about the deals that fell through with Martin Necas before, because now that led the Carolina Hurricanes to Mikko Rantanen. I don't think that Tulsky's going to bite on any of the, how many times did you have him moved and who was he going for and all that? But at the same time, I think we'd all be on the same page that it led somewhere really good. And I do wonder, Zach, and by the way, in the chat, people are wondering what happened to the top of your head. They're used to you being half man and half hat. We're not used to seeing, and he's smiling, and he's like, look at that. Zach actually does have hair underneath there. So he's not half man, half hat, half AirPods. He is an actual living, breathing human being. I wonder what the feeling is when the deal is done, and Eric Tulsky goes to Rick Tocchet and says essentially, here's the keys to a Ferrari. Go drive this thing now for the remainder of the season. Yeah, what did you make of this deal when you first heard it? I mean, I was stunned like everybody else, and then you try to measure off the returns. With Colorado, I'm reserving judgment because they're not done. But with Carolina, this is like one of those tape measure home runs. They didn't give up a first round pick. They didn't give up one of their top 3 or 5 prospects in all of this. Tape measure home run. The outfielder's not even looking at the ball. It's gone.
Yeah, that's same reaction for me. And one of them I'm sure we'll get to as this goes on as well. But you look at each part of it. So automatically I think, okay, home run for Carolina. There's no other way for me to really break that down. You've outlined everything about Mikko Rantanen. We talked about the salary, and you get in Taylor Hall, all of that stuff, who you lost. It all makes sense there for you. I think that's home run. Colorado, the first thing I thought when I thought about Colorado was there is something else. There is more to come here. There's another player. There's another move, whatever. And then the final thing, which maybe I'm being harsh on this, and I've listened to other people break this down. I don't know. I'm interested to see where this goes and listening to Eric when he joins us and then hear what you have to say about it as well. But genuinely, the honest reaction when I saw it as well was, what the hell is Chicago doing? I didn't think that they were going to go and hit a home run on this themselves. I did think more. So that's kind of each team's individual breakdown for myself there, at least, about initial reactions out the gate.
Yeah. I just wonder if it was a situation where, and again, I don't know, but I wonder if this was a situation where there were a number of teams that were prepared to act as broker, and I don't know the answer to that. And listen, what we've learned now, and I think the wise general managers have learned, is that cap space is very much a thing, and the more that you have, you need to treat it as if it is an asset. I mean, what has Tulsky talked about? I mean, we talked at the beginning of the season about him on that podcast earlier in the summer, the Expected by Whom podcast, where he talked about the moves that you're making. Are you trying to make your team better, or are you just filling holes? I think about that a lot. Like that was the one comment from anyone in hockey that I took away from the summer was that one, and I can't stop thinking about it. Okay, let's bring Eric Tulsky aboard. He is the architect, one of the three architects of this massive trade. He's the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes. Eric Tulsky joins me now on the sheet. Eric, how are you today? Have you stopped smiling? I'm guessing everyone saw your upper teeth over the weekend.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. Trying to catch up now on everything else.
What, I was just saying to Zach a couple of seconds ago, Eric, I wonder what the feeling is like when you can go to your head coach, Rod Brind'Amour, and hand him a pair of keys and say, here's a Ferrari you get to drive now. I'm curious, how much were you in conversation with Rod Brind'Amour through all of this? And I do want to ask you about Tom Dundon as well, but how much were you in concert with the coach on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Rod and I work very closely. It's essential that I understand what he's looking for, what he thinks the team needs, so that I can go try and bring it for him. He really thought very highly of the players we were sending out. So it was, it's not like he was super excited to get rid of them, but of course he's excited to bring in the players that we brought in.
I was mentioning before you came on that podcast in the summer, and the one quote in the Expected by Whom podcast where you talked about, and I'm going to paraphrase and probably Eric butcher this, but something along the lines of, are you just trying to fill spaces, or are you trying to make your team better? I mean, you let a lot of high-priced players go. Whether it's Pesce, whether it's Teravainen, whether it's Shea, whether it's Nason, and we can go on and on. How much of, because I think we're all trying to get a feel of, okay, how is Eric Tulsky going to drive this thing? Like, what's his style going to be? What should we read into this and try to learn about Eric Tulsky? Were you giving us a peek into something when you said that? As far as your management style, how you look at things like trades or the salary cap and roster construction, how much of that one quote was a peek into the hockey brain of Eric Tulsky?
Yeah, I mean, I think we try really hard not to be dogmatic about anything. There is no one right way to do it. There is no single one piece that we need. Every single situation is evaluated individually. And the question is, will this get us closer to where we want to be on every decision we make?
Mm-hmm. Was Rantanen someone that you had? I know managers talk all the time and various names get brought up. Was that someone that you identified and thought, perhaps Colorado is going to have an issue here re-signing him? Maybe he wiggles free, or was that something that you were approached with?
No, I don't know. This dates back to the summer when I talked to 31 teams about what trades we might do. And so, I forget whether I made the first call or they did, but at that time it was just, what do we have on the table? It wasn't really a serious, like, this is going to happen kind of conversation.
Right.
But, we made a list of teams that had pieces that they were willing to put in play potentially that we were interested in, and kept circling back to those teams to see where they stood and where we stood. And at some point, maybe it gets serious or maybe it doesn't. I think if you had asked me in June whether I thought that was likely to be the outcome, I would have said no, because these sorts of things usually don't happen. You put a lot of work into every one of these trades, and 99 out of 100 times, that work is just wasted effort that went nowhere. But the one time that does work, you hope it makes it all pay off.
How many, that leads me to a lot of interesting questions, I think. How many, in your mind, trades do you have sort of juggling at the same time? Like, I think a lot of fans would be curious, would you be able to right now pull the trigger on something if you said, Jeff, I got to go, I got to take this call? Could you pull the trigger on something right now? Like, how many balls in the air do you normally have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have a second thing that is that close to completion right now. But, as we were getting close to making a decision on that, we had a few things we were looking at, and we, we needed to get to where everybody understood what each side's sort of final offer was, so that everybody could make a decision about which way they wanted to go.
When you when it became obvious that this was going to be more than just a casual conversation with Colorado, first of all, when did it start to go from warm to hot? And what was the final piece? Like, was there one thing that this deal wasn't going to get done unless X happened? When did it really get hot, and what was the final touch on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the last couple of weeks is when it got especially serious. I think the final touch was really everybody being ready to switch from conversations about what it might look like to actually pulling the trigger. And there were some pieces involved in the deal that started to have some time pressure. And so that was ultimately the impetus. It was a complicated deal where we were looking at multiple things. Colorado was looking at multiple things. Chicago was looking at multiple things. And so if any one of those has a deadline, then everybody else needs to figure out what they want to do.
Was there at any point, because I'm always curious about the broker in all of this, like one of the things that I'm starting to learn right now, and we're seeing it with a couple of other teams, is for teams that are eyes set on the Stanley Cup, and that's your team and that's Colorado, certainly, it's hard to do a deal. With two teams who have eyes on 2025, you kind of sometimes need someone who's looking at 2026 instead of just 2025. So I'm curious about the broker here. Was it always this combination of teams that were going to make this deal?
No, I mean, over the course of months, I've talked to a lot of teams about how they could sort of help broker a deal, thrown ideas at a lot of people. The Chicago idea came together because we were also interested in Taylor, and I think there was an assumption that trade would come with them retaining on him, and his salary, the actual cash, is about the same on him as it is on Mikko. And so it's not that different for them, but obviously better for us if we get the cap retention. And so it was possible for us to do a trade where we paid a little bit more than we would to get more cap space while not actually costing them meaningfully more cash.
Was there, or were there rather, any no-fly zones for you in all of this? Like, one of the things I think, when I first saw the complete trade, because listen, you hear Mikko Rantanen's name, you're like, okay, how many firsts did Carolina give up? And then you start to think, okay, did they give up Morrow? Did they give up Nikishin? Did they give up Nadeau? And the picks were a second and a fourth. In your mind, in this deal, were there no-fly zones like, no, we're not giving up Nadeau, no, we're not giving up a first? Was there anything like that, or was that all negotiable?
I mean, of course, there were players we didn't want to let go, but I think part of what you're describing is a lot of these trades are a team that is sort of out of it, moving on from a UFA before he leaves. It's very different when it's two contenders making a trade. And so I don't think they wanted a package that was just a bunch of futures. We could have thrown 11 first-round picks at them, and I think they would have said no, because that doesn't help them win a cup this year. And so, it is unusual that we were putting in really good players who might help them win a cup. But then once you do that, you're not also getting premium futures, right? So that's the trade-off that came in this case, because it was not the usual deal of a buyer and a seller. It was a deal with two buyers exchanging valuable players.
I want to ask you about Tom Dundon. I asked you about, working closely with Rod Brindamore. And I want to make sure that people understand this. Once upon a time, the general manager worked with complete autonomy. Those days are gone. Once upon a time, you saw your owner at the beginning of the season, maybe at Christmas, and then at the end of the year, and that was it. It's different now. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And the one thing that I think I understand about Tom Dundon, one, he has a value on everything. And two, he's not shy about going big game hunting. Like, and this is obviously a whopper of a deal. But Tom Dundon and the Carolina Hurricanes have, to varying degrees, always sort of been in and around deals when there are big name players available. Can you share any of your conversations with your owner around the Rantanen deal?
Yeah, I mean, so Tom's perspective is always that he wants us to be active. We want to be part of every conversation and make sure we don't miss a chance to make the team better. And it doesn't matter whether it's a small deal or a big deal. He wants to think about, is this something that would help us? And part of what is freeing is it's not just that he wants to be having conversations, it's that he wants to really think about on every one, should we do this? And he understands if we make 5 trades with a good thought process, a good outcome might be that 3 work out and 2 don't. And in many places, you'd be worried that you're going to get fired because of the 2 that didn't work. But here I have an owner who understands that, in fact, we will be ahead because more worked than didn't. And so that is freeing. It allows us to take some risks that you wouldn't always be able to take, because as long as he's comfortable with the thought process, he understands it won't always work out. And if the risk is balanced by the right amount of upside, we'll go ahead and take the shot.
Have you already had the conversation with your owner about extending Mikko Rantanen?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about an extension from the beginning, right? It's part of the risk in this trade is we don't have an extension done yet. So we have to price in the possibility of doing it, the likely price it would be, the likelihood that we think we can get it done. Obviously, if we get an extension done at a low price, this will be an incredible outcome for us. If we don't get an extension at all, it'll be a little disappointing. Hopefully, we felt like we weighed all the risks and understood where the situation was and felt like we were in a good position to take the chance and press and work on getting this deal done.
At what point do you go to the player and his representation and say, we're interested, are you? Or is that already just baked into the pie?
Yeah, I mean, so that's part of the conversation we've had already. And, we are comfortable that that the situation we have to offer should be compelling, and we have the cap space to get a reasonable deal done. If the player just wants to go to free agency, then so be it, right? That's a risk we're prepared to take. I don't expect that's where we're going to be. I hope that's not where we'll be. But, that's the work we have to get to now is we got the trade done. Now we have to start working on the extension.
It's interesting. Speaking of the extension in the cap space, as a lot of players went elsewhere, as I mentioned off the top of the interview here, I see all this coming together now, and I'm wondering how far down the road in your mind, and I know things can always change and different situations arise, but when it comes to planning, like, you don't strike me as the kind of person that's just, you know what, let's get through this year, clean up our cap in the summer, and then go back at it next season. Like, you strike me as someone who's looking, and this trade really brought that into focus for me, because all of a sudden next season with all of this cap space, you're uniquely qualified to pay Mikko Rantanen a very, very healthy sum. How much in your mind are you looking down the road with this team?
Yeah, I mean, we do try to look ahead as much as we can. We've been managing our cap pretty carefully to make it so that we could get this deal done when the time came, if it came. Not that we knew it would, but you want to have the flexibility to take advantage of whatever might come along. You never want to be constrained in a way that makes you miss a chance.
Yeah.
And part of what we understood is that we have the cap space to get a reasonable deal done, if this did end up happening. We've sort of thought through what our roster could look like next year, and I think we're pretty comfortable with a couple different scenarios. We'll see how it plays out.
When do you judge a trade? Like, I look at this one and I say, you know what, I'm not gonna judge Colorado's end of things until I see, March 7th, 3 o'clock Eastern, what this team looks like, because they've now freed up some cap space as well. Like, at what point do you look at a deal and say, okay, now I'm prepared to judge it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by judge it, right? If you're evaluating the decisions that each side made, you really have to do that with the information they had at the time. So we gave up a fourth round pick in that deal. If that fourth round pick
Mm,
becomes another Mikko Rantanen, that doesn't mean we made a bad deal. It means, their draft pick worked out and good for them. Um, ultimately both sides made a decision based on the information they had, and that's how you evaluate it right now. Now, of course, 5 years later, you can look back and say, did it work out or not? That's a different question, right? You're not really judging the decision people made, you're judging whether it panned out. And that's also an interesting question, but it's not the one that I would use to evaluate the decision you made.
how much did your players know that you were in the market for something this big? I know players always assume that managers, especially teams that are going for the Stanley Cup, always assume that the manager is in market and looking to do something. Um, would any of these players have known specifically? I mean, I wonder about Sebastian Aho for the obvious reasons. Know that maybe you were going big game hunting there in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. We kept this pretty tightly held, out of respect for them, frankly. Like
Mm-hmm.
they did not want their player's name hitting the media until we were doing a deal. And I can understand that. And so we kept things pretty quiet and tried to make sure there was no risk of creating a media circus for them. Um, I think our players know we're always going to be looking to try to get better. That doesn't always mean there's something like this in the works, though.
The other thing that I'm curious about too, what have your players said to you about this? Like I would imagine you're Seth Jarvis or you're Brent Burns or whatever, and all of a sudden like, wait a minute, did our GM just get Mikko Rantanen? What did you hear from your players right away?
Yeah, I mean, I've only talked to a couple of them so far, and I think they're excited to have the players that we have come in. I think they're also, always a little bit disappointed to see their close friends and teammates go out. And that's, everybody in the end understands that's part of life in this business. They want to see us keep trying to get better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always bittersweet, right? You can be excited about the new guy and also sad to lose the old guy at the same time.
For sure. In your mind and perhaps in Rod's mind as well, Mikko Rantanen, we've seen him play center before. Is he a center or is he a winger? Can he be both?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's going to be up to Rod to decide how he wants to set up his lineup. I think Mikko's mostly played on the wing, and that's probably the most likely outcome. But
Mm-hmm.
certainly, he has taken a lot of faceoffs in his time and occasionally played center. And if that's, if our lineup ends up set where that's where Rod sees him, then that's where he'll play.
At what point did you stop allowing yourself to enjoy that moment and move on to getting back to work?
Um, I mean, I think the work has been pretty much nonstop. So, um, there's a lot to do, right? And you finish the trade, and now there's logistics for making connections to people, getting people in, getting, players ready to play. And then it's on to what's our next move and what else can we do? How can we keep getting better?
Mm-hmm. Let me ask about the Taylor Hall piece here. I only have a couple more for you, but I do want to ask about Taylor Hall, who's had one of the most unique, for a first overall pick, has had one of the most unique careers that we've seen in the NHL. And right in the middle of it, there's a bam, Hart Trophy. How long have you had your eyes on Taylor Hall? Your thoughts on him, the player? I know it's been a couple of tough seasons. I know it's been punctuated by injuries, but what made Taylor Hall attractive to you in this?
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at him for a while. He's a very skilled player who also brings size and speed. We like to play a forechecking game, and he has the ability to get in and pressure and win pucks along the walls and the vision to make plays from there. He has the speed to back the D off when he has the puck. Um, there's just a lot of things about his game that fit the way we play and provide sort of that upgrade of both skill and size that we've been looking to bring into our top nine.
Let me end on this one because this is, I mentioned this off the top of the show. this is your essentially rookie season as general manager, and I think everyone's trying to get a feel for how Eric Tulsky does business, and every move that you do is another piece of that puzzle for hockey fans to get to know Eric Tulsky. What do you think hockey fans, whether it's Carolina or the other 31 markets, what should hockey fans know about you as a general manager?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I said, we're not trying to be dogmatic. I don't think there's any one thing we're looking for. I think we are, in every case, open to ideas and thinking about it individually. And if there is a deal that we don't do, it's because either we didn't see the fit or we thought the price was too high. We're always prepared to move on to the next one. We never feel beholden that this is the deal we have to do. But when we see a deal that we think makes sense for us, we're not going to be afraid to go ahead and get it done.
I know you won't say who it was, but did you feel like you were close anywhere else in the last little while?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly had a couple things on the table that we had to give pretty serious consideration to. This was the one that ended up making the most sense for us.
Sell us, last one for you. What's the pitch to Rantanen going to sound like to extend?
Yeah, I mean, I still need to get to know him before I know exactly what the pitch should look like. I think we have a really strong team. We have a coach that people like playing for. We have a really good locker room. We have a place that's a great place to live. So all of those, I think, are compelling pieces. Ultimately, I need to get to know him and understand what it is that drives him so that I can make sure that, that's part of what we're offering him and making a pitch that will sound compelling to him.
That's wonderful. Listen, thanks so much. I know it's a busy time. You're always busy. I really appreciate your time today, Eric. Be well. Congratulations on the deal and handing your coach the keys to a new Ferrari. Looks great on the Hurricanes. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
There he is, Eric Tulsky, the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, pulling off the big deal with Chris McFarland and, of course, Kyle Davidson on the weekend, Zach, and that is the three-way deal that sees Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall, let's not forget that piece as well, end up as members of the Carolina Hurricanes. Anything stand out there? Because I think we're all trying to figure, okay, how does Tulsky operate? Anything stand out there for you?
Yeah, you know how Berkey told us the stories about the Pirates back in the day and those guys,
Yep.
and you hear them go out?
Yeah.
Tulsky may be the nicest pirate I've ever seen or watched come
pirate.
across. The nicest pirate. He's going to look you in the eye, give you a little pat on the shoulder, and next thing you know, your wallet, your watch, your chain, it's gone. Because, I don't know, that was very cool to watch, you guys talking about that and how the trade went down. But it's not just the trade, it's how we approach things methodically and how it fits, and then the conversations back to the summer, like watching that unfold was awesome. And then, by the way, the chat loved that, loved hearing from Eric there. Oh yeah. And just how he approaches the game and everything. So that was cool.
You know what's and again, like this is a new, again, like historically general managers have always been ex-players. And I'm not knocking ex-players. You can still be an ex-player and do this job quite well. Thank you very much. But once upon a time, like, you had to have played in the NHL to manage a team. Slowly but surely, that is leaving the game. Not that I think it should have been, but, Kyle Dubas in Toronto was kind of an audit in some ways. That became like the audit of analytics, as ridiculous as that was, because all teams in the NHL see and find the value when it comes to analytics. But Eric Tulsky is another person who, and I always say this to young people that want to get into hockey that may not be playing, like, look what Eric Tulsky just did. Like, I remember reading Eric Tulsky's work online, right? Like we all do it. Next thing you know, he's pulling off the Mikko Rantanen trade and, hinting at other deals, which I would imagine were probably the Vancouver deals. But like all of a sudden now he's, over the weekend, one of the most interesting, popular, and powerful people in hockey, making the Mikko Rantanen deal. Like, he just made a move for Hall of Famer. mid-season. January's not over, and he just got a future Hall of Famer. And again, he didn't give up a first-round pick. He didn't give up any of his top prospects. And the Carolina Hurricanes got significantly better here and brought themselves closer to the Stanley Cup. And that's someone whose blog I used to read. And one of his assistant general managers, Tyler Dello, is someone whose blog I used to read. I think it's a really healthy thing, the way the NHL is going. And I think when you do moves like this, I think it brings a certain amount of respect towards people that didn't follow the traditional, I played Junesies and Swifty, and now I'm the general manager of this team.
You know what? One thing, too, that I think is going to be interesting with the fallout of or follow maybe the wrong word, the reaction of this from fans is, you see it all the time. How often is it like, we can't let, and I'm not trying to like say this about Eric, but I think you and him would probably both get it, is we can't let these nerds run the team, right? Like, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but that's kind of the sentiment that gets thrown out there around it. Well, he just traded for Mikko Rantanen, barely lost anything, drastically improved his team. And, oh, by the way, the other thing, it was pointed out by someone in the chat, I wish I grabbed the name, but lost Pesci, Shea, you name it from last year, and basically just his facial expression didn't change and said, hold my beer, watch this, or hold my smart water, as you said.
I should have told him.
He just walked out of there.
But then again, that's where it goes back to. Like, I know I keep coming back to that one interview, but I just thought it was fascinating listening to him talking about that. Are you just trying to fill a hole, or are you trying to make your team better? Like a lot of managers be like, oh man, like we can't lose this pair. We have to have this pair. Why? Like it's almost as if Tulsky embraces the challenge of this player's going to cost more than we're prepared to pay him. Even though we're going to lose the player, we're going to get the cap space. And as a manager, I embrace the challenge of not just filling that hole, but making our team better with either A, the cap space, or B, another player to go into that position and have some leftover cap space to do something else. Like Tulsky's made the point too. If he re-signed everybody in the offseason, he would have been $20 million over the salary cap, and the team wouldn't have been better. It would have been the same team. Glenn Sather used to always say about that 80s Oilers team, like they're winning Stanley Cups. And Sather would always say every year, just to keep it fresh and keep it, the dressing room energized, you change your team about 15%. Where common wisdom was like, you win the Stanley Cup, you don't change anything, right? Everything has to remain exactly the same. We just won the cup. It's kind of like that philosophy of, you never change a winning lineup. How many times have you seen that, Zach? And then if you lose a game, you got to shuffle out a couple of guys on the fourth line. Yeah, that'll show them. That'll teach them everything. But I think there's a couple of lessons here. And now that the salary cap is going to grow, like the salary cap was artificially depressed. And so a lot of managers had a built-in excuse for not being able to make deals. How many times has your general manager out there said, deals are hard to make in a flat cap? Well, they are if you're not a creative general manager, right? Yes. And prepared to do creative things. And Tulsky obviously brings a very creative side to himself. Okay, so there's still more things to come out of that one that we'll go over today, and it'll bleed into tomorrow. But the other thing that I wanted to get to on the show today, and trust me, there's plenty more on this deal that'll continue to spring out. But Michael Andlauer, the owner of the Ottawa Senators, had an interesting one. In a press conference that should have just been a good news, hey, we're going to play a couple of exhibition games in Quebec City, and isn't that great here at the La Centre Videotron, it turned into, I don't want to say it's a disaster, but it turned into something awkward. Here for comment is Jason Marek from the Coming In Hot podcast to comment on a tough day in Sensland. And I'm not sure, York Chop, if you saw the picture of Spartacat with the half Senators, half Nordiques jersey on, but just reading the comments, that did not go over well, York Chop. That did not go over well.
Oh, well, first of all, Jeff, you're having a great hair day. There's some positive right there. Right?
I don't think so. I don't know. I've told you before, I'm like the Kraft peanut butter bear, just sort of poof, and then that's it. Yeah, it's just happy that I have some.
I'm not taking this hat off because you don't want to see this off right now, but so it's funny. Your producer Zach sends me a note, and we did our show this morning, and I like to decompress after I go to the gym, take the dog for a walk, go for a coffee. I didn't check social media all day, and I'm like, "Wait, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh." So I've been on. I was talking to Wally. I think there's now up to 95,000 views on the picture, the split screen of the Sens Nordiques. This, I'll simplify it as best as I can.
Okay.
I think there was very good intentions with what they're doing.
I agree.
I just think if you look at, and Jeff, if you look at what the Senators have done so far under Michael Andlauer, Steve Staios, Dave Poulin, they've pretty well hit all the marks. Like everything is. They're in third place right now in the division. They're in a playoff spot. They've had a great season so far. Everything's been really good. I would say this is probably the first time you could say, you just might want to think that over before you do the split jersey. Because I don't mind. For me, you want to go play games in Quebec City, great. Preseason. And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to expand the Ottawa Senators fan base. And why wouldn't you?
Sure.
I think there's great intentions there. But this fan base, and I know from living in here, playing in here, and now doing media for the last, 15 years, the fan base, I don't know if sensitive is the right word, but the team's been around long enough where there's a lot of pride in this fan base. And they don't like to see something like that where you have a jersey with your team. And even though the Quebec Nordiques don't exist anymore, I just think a lot of people don't like that look. And it's obviously by the reaction on Twitter. And like I said, I don't think there was any poor intentions. I just think probably one of those things where you might have wanted to think, you know what, before we do this, let's maybe spitball a little bit more and see what the reaction is going to be. Because the reaction hasn't been good on that part. I don't think people care about playing there or doing that in the regular season. It's just the jersey thing is the big thing.
See, you mentioned the word sensitive, and I agree with you on that. I think the fan base is sensitive, and the fan base should be sensitive. It's not that long ago, not that I'm speak ill of the dead, but we can all remember Eugene Melnyk speculating on, well, if I don't see full buildings here, there's Quebec City down the street. Listen, I can understand the fan base being particularly sensitive about that. I get that.
I'd squash that right away because there's no chance this team's moving. And I personally know, like, this ownership group, there's a ton of money behind the team. There's a ton of people that care. So there's as far as saying this is a threat or something, absolutely not. I just think this is something, like I said, where you're going there, you're trying to get some excitement around there. I just think the timing wasn't great and probably wasn't thought out wholeheartedly of that pick there, because I think they were just trying to have some fun with it, get some excitement going. A couple, Thomas Chabot was down there, had some players down there.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, and I would say the timing, what I mean by that, Jeff, you just had a game against the Maple Leafs where you played one of your best games of the year. And I'll tell you, from playing in those games, you got a lot of Toronto Maple Leaf fans in your building, and that pisses not only the players, that pisses Sens fans off. A lot of Sens fans don't go to the games because they don't want to be in that environment. So the timing of this, along with the timing of just having the Toronto Maple Leafs in town, where the game went well, but people are, sensitive isn't a good word. I'll tell you, I hated it, and Ottawa fans don't like it either.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this too, I think there'll be a lot. I think you can calm a lot of people down. I know this is out of Michael Andlauer's hands, but I mean, I think everyone's just waiting for an announcement about the new arena, and would have figured that would have come by now.
Sure.
I know, and listen, I am not throwing darts at Andlauer for that one. He's trying to move this thing along as quickly as possible. But I think if anything, that would calm I agree with you. Like the reaction, they're musing about going to Quebec City. Ottawa Senators not going to Quebec City. Ottawa Senators going nowhere. But I think what would calm everybody down is if there were concrete plans, and here is a direction towards the new arena.
Just think from dealings in the past and being from Ottawa, the NCC, there's been delays before. Everybody knows the parcel of land down there, LeBreton Flats. It's been sitting there for a while. So people want to get it going. But like anything, it takes time. I think people are reading a little more into that announcement than was there. Like, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take probably the whole year to get a deal done, and to get, there's a ton of things to go behind there. There's political things that go on and all that things. But as far as putting Quebec City and the announcement with LeBreton Flats and the rink, there is there's zero correlation between the two. I just think it's something they did. And the thing that's pissed people off more is the jersey and sharing the jersey like that. And I understand that. But as far as Quebec City, the team moving and all that, and trying to use this as leverage, I think there's zero connection to those two things.
Okay, off of that page, really quick to the actual hockey team.
Yeah, let's do it.
All of a sudden, we were wondering which of the three were going to emerge, Detroit, Buffalo, or the Ottawa Senators. Though, look now, we have our answer. Do you think it's legit? Do you think this is a legit team right now, or is this a little bit of fool's gold? What say you, Jason York?
I would say it's legit, Jeff. And this team plays, I've been saying this for a couple months now, the way this team goes about their business, the way they play, I know they're not scoring right now, but they defend better than I have seen this team defend in a long time. You'd have to go back to 2017 when they made the playoffs. They made that nice little run. But it's Travis Green has these guys bought in, Jeff. They're winning without their number one goaltending in Ullmark. Everybody was worried when he went down. Merliven has come in there and played really well. Everybody thought Forsberg was out and he wasn't going to get back to it. And long behold, here he is. He's had a couple real nice strong games as well. So I think it's legit. It's been too consistent for too long how this team plays. They're in every game. They always give themselves a chance because of the style they play. And you know as well as I do, if you're going to be a playoff team, it's all about defending. And this team has learned how to defend.
Mm-hmm. Who's been Merliven might be the ultimate answer. Holy smokes, has he been fantastic for his team. But who's been the biggest revelation for you outside of him, who got ushered into duty by necessity? Who's been the biggest revelation for you?
I would say probably the guy that's made the most impact that probably doesn't get enough credit outside the Ottawa area, probably Nick Jensen. Like I look at what he's done, Jeff. Like a lot of people were talking about Thomas Chabot in a negative way before this season. A lot of people were talking about this right side was too thin on defense. I'm not saying he's been their best player, but what he's done coming into this situation. And I'm a little bit biased being a right shot defenseman, but he's really stabilized that blue line. Everybody says this, how do you go and find a right shot defenseman in the league right now that can play in your top four? Ottawa did it. Like I know they lost Chychrun in the deal, but Jensen has been, my God, Jeff, he's been really, really good. And he's helped Chabot bring his game to where people thought it should be, which is he's been playing excellent. So I just look at the stabilizing force of Jensen has really, really brought this team to another level.
The old cliche is right shot, add 10% to the contract. How much extra do you think you earned because you were a right shot D? Do you ever think about that in your career? How much extra you put in your jeans, Dirk Chop?
Oh, I'd love to play now, Jeff, just being a guy that can skate the puck. And I'd play a little bit. That's why I like Jensen. I like that style of play. Yeah. Obviously. I think more so now than ever with the right shot D. I just think every team's looking for him. And the game's changed too. It's all about skating, moving the puck, making that first pass. That's what Jensen does. So absolutely. Yeah, I probably made a few million for that reason alone.
Just casual, few million, just put it out in the back. Yeah. Just go buy some tin cans at Canadian Tire, stuff the money in and bury it in your backyard. I know, Yorkie, I know. Long, quiet green, not the noisy stuff that makes that rattling noise in our pockets. All right, listen, we'll let you go on that. Thanks for jumping in real last. I just wanted to make sure that we had some kind of conversation about what happened today. Ultimately, it goes nowhere because the Ottawa Senators are not going anywhere. But it was.
They're not.
Put it this way. I look at what happened today as a controlled fire. That was a very, very controlled. It wasn't anything that's going to get anything carried away. I think everybody, to your point, everybody knows what the intentions were. Things happen along the way.
Good way to put a bow on it, Jeff. Good way to put a bow.
There we go. All right. Nice and tidy. Okay, back to your daily chores, and we'll check in again soon. Say hi to Wally for me.
See you, Jeffy.
There is Jason York from the Coming In Hot podcast here on Daily Faceoff and the Nation Network. And Zach just sort of threw it out there to the chat a couple of seconds ago about, what did everyone think about Tulsky? There's a lot of, get more general managers on the program. See, here's my thing, Zach, and I'm curious what you think about having GMs on. The reason I like talking to general managers is we hear a lot from coaches. We hear coaches daily. And coaches write a lot of books. Players write books and officials write books, etc. The one area where we don't hear a lot of conversation, the ones that are actually the architects of putting teams together. And I know a lot of it needs to be shrouded. Sometimes the veils are thick and sometimes the veils are thin, but nonetheless, there's still a veil that the manager wants to place between, himself and how he puts the team together and the team itself. But it's very rare that you're going to get someone who will, come on and just sort of spill all the beans. Bless Berkey for that. Berkey was, even when he was managing, is fantastic. You remember when Brian Burke came out and said, it's one of his first, probably his first press conference in Toronto, he said, I'm going to get John Tavares in the draft. We're like, how are you going to get John? It's just like, just come out and say something. How are you going to do? What are you talking about? Like, it was someone I called Garth Snow on that one. Anyway, so people seem to want more general managers. So we'll endeavor to get more managers on the program here. What did you?
One thing I think is interesting too about the GMs there, Jeff, is that the one thing I feel like people, and Berkey kind of discussed some of it, but people always assume trades, signings, that's what they do. There's more to it, right? And Berkey explained some of the other stuff that they do behind the scenes. But then you listen to Tulsky come on here. It's very clearly even more to trades and signings. Like people think, hey, I'm just going to call up Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, I'm going to trade you for Mikko Rantanen today. And they say, yep, done. And it's over within an hour. It's like, no, he's been talking to these people since, July, August, whatever it may be, about who could be coming up, and then circle back and, hey, what are you thinking about that guy? Like, stuff takes time.
That's why I always laugh. And I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody specific here at all. Just generally, when I hear reports of like, ooh, Philadelphia's talking to San Jose. They should be talking like once a week. Or, I heard the Rangers are talking with the Red Wings. Yeah, they should. It's what general managers do. I always sort of sideways laugh at those, like, the LA Kings are in conversation with the Florida Panthers. Like, the managers should be talking. Put that on the list of things to ask Berkey about. I remember, one of the first conversations when I was at Hockey Night, going back to like 2007. I remember talking to Kelly Rudy about when he first heard his name involved in trade rumors. And he was with LA, and Rogie Vachon, another goalie, one of the best ever, Hall of Famer, 1976 Canada Cup, outstanding, I digress. He said, like, how often do you talk about me in trades, Rogie? And Rogie said, every day. He said, what? He goes, yeah, every day. I talk about all my players every day to all the other teams, Kelly. That's what I do. It's shocking to hear as a player. It's like, oh yeah, I talk about you every day. What would you be willing to do? What's the scenario? What do you need? Like, now it's so many managers have expressed this one, and that is conversations now are more, you just call people, check in on them. What are you looking for? What do you need? As opposed to, as you mentioned earlier with, Brian talking about, the Pirates. And I was mentioning to the guys, DJ and Pete, on What's Chaos today, Cliff Fletcher, once upon a time, you shook hands with Cliff Fletcher. You counted your fingers after. How many times has Berkey said on this show or elsewhere, the way we used to judge a trade was, did you get the other GM fired? Because that was a good, did that guy lose his job? Good, I did good. Now GMs would be horrified they got somebody fired. But once upon a time, like, these guys were all sharks, trying to smoke each other. Okay. Anything else? We should mention Logan Thompson, by the way. 6 times 5.85. This is one of the great success stories in the NHL, and has turned himself into one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. I think we all wonder about the Four Nations with Alex Pietrangelo now taking a pass, but wonder about the goaltending with Canada. Can you replace a defenseman with a goaltender? Is Canada allowed to do that? Pietrangelo's not going in his place. We're gonna insert Logan Thompson. Should probably be there based on the season that he's had this year and previous as well. So he re-signs with the Washington Capitals. Any other headlines from around today that you want to get to before we get to the games tonight? And I want to say a couple of things about Jasper as well.
No, that was kind of it. I did want to touch on, there's some more Rantanen and the conversations about contract stuff, but
sure.
I mean, I'm sure that's going to last for a while, and we have Wish on tomorrow, so I'm sure those things will come up as well. We don't need to jam them all in here today. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, I think, is more important to get to today before we move on from stuff is the Four Nations. You know, it obviously came out. We saw Wish tweet earlier that you're not going to get suspended if you skip it. Pietrangelo pulls out. I think a lot of people started raising their eyebrows and going, okay, yeah, the player pulled out. Oh, he played 24 minutes for the Vegas Golden Knights last night.
Yeah.
I know there's more to it. I know there's other things that could be going on, whatever. But I'm wondering as we get closer if there could be more pullouts and what the kickback would be from fans on some of this stuff.
It's really interesting. Now, you always wonder when someone opens the door, who else is gonna walk out of it. Now, with Pietrangelo, I mean, he's been there, done that, competed internationally. I was, like you, curious last night when I flipped on the Vegas game to see how many minutes he was going to play. And I think only Braden McNabb played more on the team. Yeah. It was only by a few seconds as well than Alex Pietrangelo did. Like, the way that I look at it is this. The guys really want to go and play in the Olympics. Like, that's the one thing that I think they're really, really eager for legitimate international competition, and there is an allure with the Olympics. And I think everybody saw how upset the players were they couldn't go to the Olympics the last time around. And we don't very often see Crosby complaining about things publicly, but he was quite vocal about that. Connor McDavid was quite vocal about that. That's what these guys want. This is a middle of the season team divided up by 4 different countries. I too, especially now that players know that they will not be suspended if they don't go, like there are some players, one that I was, we have a mutual acquaintance talking on the weekend, and he said, are you going to play in the Four Nations? And the players said, well, it depends how much they're paying us. Like, none of these guys want to get hurt as well, especially like, these elite level guys that play on Stanley Cup potential teams. None of these guys want to get injured. And I don't know of anyone who's thinking about or close to pulling out here, but I always do wonder, one goes first, who follows, right? And Alex Pietrangelo here is being the Neil Armstrong. Is there going to be a Buzz Aldrin that comes second? I don't know. Or third? Is this going to be, I don't think it's going to be this major this series of dominoes that fall. But when one says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to take the time off, because let's not forget, season is long. Players are always have some type of ailment and could probably use rest and recovery, but could still get through an NHL season. And that's what they measure off. So I can understand with Alex Pietrangelo, who's put a lot of miles on that body, I can understand him saying, you know what, I can get through a season. I just don't need anything extra right now. We have a team that could win the Stanley Cup. I don't want to jeopardize that at all. I would if it were the Olympics, but not the Four Nations face-off. So I get it. I don't have a good answer for you. But I do have the same questions that you do, Zach. I do wonder if he's first, if anybody else does follow here, especially now that they know they're not getting suspended for any of it, which I always thought was interesting. You're not going to go to something, so your suspension is you can't play.
Yeah, I know. It's like, okay.
Oh, you skipped school? Sure. Oh, yeah, we're going to suspend you for a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, to the point, too, it's like you think about the 82 games season, you think about how many games some of these guys have played. On the flip side of this, it's not like it's going to the Four Nations is a lot of hockey. Like, it's 4 teams that are in it, right? You break it down, okay, maybe it's not that much, but it is intense. It's some of the highest level hockey that you could play.
Yeah.
It's a 2-week break on the opposite side if you do look at it. Like, that is the other side of the fence there where you're like,
you know what?
That's
you know what? All those guys, all those guys playing Four Nations are going to get.
Nothing.
They're going to get pictures from all their teammates, from the
beaches. Exactly. Yeah.
How's the tournament going? That's going to happen. We got a few things to go over here for tonight's games, including a couple of returns. Tonight's game board looks like this. 5 games brought to you by FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. Roster updates coming to us from our daily Faceoff Fantasy Twitter X feed, which is updated throughout the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, and overnight as well. That feed never sleeps. So 5 games. You have the Kings and the Wings at Little Caesars Arena. Cam Talbot starts. Darcy Kemper starts. Big one in this one, Dominic Shine. Do you see the story? So Dominic Shine is a Detroit kid. He played Little Caesars and CompuWare growing up. Played for the Lincoln Stars at the USHL. He's always had, he's signed, I want to say like 8 one-year AHL deals with the Detroit Red Wings. Today signs essentially a 2-year deal, so the remainder of this season and next year. Signs his first NHL deal. He plays tonight for his hometown team at Little Caesars against the Los Angeles Kings. Nice player, and as I want to point out to everybody, so don't be surprised if it happens, sneaky tough. Sneaky tough guy, Zach. So watch for Dominic Shine, and congratulations to that young man there as well. Devils and Flyers, Wells Fargo. Nico Hischier flying back to New Jersey for further evaluation on his injury. Canucks and Blues at the Enterprise Center. Jordan Binnington starts, and it is the return of Tyler Myers for the Vancouver Canucks this evening. Only outdone by the return of Connor McDavid. After the 3-game suspension, he is back tonight as the Oilers host the Seattle Kraken. Calvin Pickard starts. The Skinner family expecting a baby. Penguins and Sharks at HP Pavilion. So we get the obvious Sidney Crosby versus who? Zach. Macklin Celebrini. PWHL as well. New York Sirens facing off against the Ottawa Charge at TD Place in Ottawa. 7 o'clock Eastern there. The Charge are in 3rd, Sirens in 4th. Sarah Fillier, 12 points in 11 games. She is 2nd in scoring the PWHL. Kendall Coyne-Schofield has 14, and it is 1 versus 2 from the draft. So Sarah Fillier against Danielle Serdachny, 1st and 2nd overall picks. What's spicy in those games for you tonight, Zach?
Well, I have a PWHL thing I want to bring up to you as well. Before I get to that, I don't think I've done this yet, especially since FanDuel's joined us here. Mm-hmm. Does it not feel like a Connor McDavid goal kind of night?
No, it feels like It feels like Connor McDavid hat trick tonight. Do you not think that McDavid is going to come out and like go off for 5 points tonight?
10.
Like honestly, I always make the joke that Daryl Sittler's. I'm glad you brought us here. Okay, I always make the joke, Zach, that no one's going to break Daryl Sittler's record because everybody now is like, oh yeah, they get like 5 or 6 points, and then either the coach or they don't want to go back on the ice. So stop that. Do you not get the feeling that if Connor McDavid has a chance to break Daryl Sittler's record tonight against the Seattle Kraken, that he's going to go for it, and Chris Knobloch better not sit him down for the 3rd period. If he's got like 8 points in the 3rd period, he better get the full 2 minutes on every single power play to try to break Daryl Sittler's 10 points. Like he's had like 3 games of like frustration and anger and just being pissed off. Let him cook. Just let McDavid go. Just like, how much do you want to play tonight, Connor? Is 25 minutes enough? Do you want to play more? Do you want what do you want? You want to stay on the full 2 minutes of every? Go for it, Connor. Like I'm with you 1,000,000%, Zach. I'm so glad you brought that up. Go McDavid, go. Just run wild tonight as he returns. 100% with you. 100%.
Like there's no certainties. There's no such thing as a
Hockey,
certainty, and it's the NHL, which is also like even more spontaneous here. But like Connor McDavid to score against the Seattle Kraken. And I'm like, I don't know. I was just even looking at the number on FanDuel, plus 130. I'm like, oh my God, this might be one I'm diving all over tonight, Jeff. I just saw that number. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So that's one I might be jumping in on.
Hop on that one.
PWHL.
Yep.
Did you see the Scepters game at Scotiabank Arena? Did you happen to
incredible.
see? I know you were out in Jasper, and we'll talk about that. But I just
saw the highlights and the clips, and the fans were incredible. Like I just love seeing the packed houses. The packed NHL houses are fantastic. Yeah, it's tremendous.
Yeah, in Scotiabank Arena, which is like the library when the Maple Leafs play there, and it's the loudest barn I've ever seen in my life when the Scepters do.
But the thing is, like the vibe, like the PWHL vibe to games is so much different than it is for the NHL. NHL, there's so much like anxiety and worry and tension. PWHL, like I hope they never get to that place where everything's just like nervousness and anxiety, but like it's much of a more like fun party. We're here to celebrate hockey and watch a good game kind of vibe. That doesn't surprise me at all. Does it surprise you?
Yeah. No, honestly, and I live downtown Toronto now, so I've seen the development of this. It's nuts walking around here on PWHL game days, especially when it's at home. So there's bars that people are going to watch when they don't play here. When they do play here, there's a big crowd out. You know what actually I messed up on, and I wish I did. I went to with some of my friends a restaurant down the street, and I live like in the vicinity of where the Marlies play. I can't. The name of the arena is escaping me. So that's where the Sepers play as well. Usually,
Coca-Cola Coliseum.
Yeah, it was on game day, and I walk into the restaurant, can't get a table, and I see people wearing jerseys, and I'm like, they're playing there nearby, so it's packed. There were people wearing Aaron Ambrose, Victoire, and Team Canada jerseys, and I didn't do anything, and then after the fact, I was like, I wish I got a picture or something so that we could have had that, but yeah, I messed that up.
Not your last time seeing an Ambrose jersey. And not your not your last time. Now, tried to get Ambrose to Jasper on the weekend and couldn't quite pull it together. Unsuccessful. Bad B. But I do want to mention a couple of things about Jasper. So the Pond Hockey Tournament, Flames Nation, Oilers Nation. So we had the two teams involved. I don't want to brag, but the team that I was part of made it all the way to the final, Zach, and had nothing to do with me. My skills have just, not that I was great ever to begin with, but like I can play positionally well, but I swear, Zach, now I have hands like feet. Just call me like hands of
gone.
Yeah, man, I have like two feet at the end of my arms, man. I got zero hands, but I will tell you one thing. Johnny Lazarus was our ringer. Laz can play. Like when Laz, he would always try to like set everybody up and make sure everyone's getting a touch and all that. And I'd just go off and like, Laz, just go, man. Like honestly, just go and fill it out. Like Laz is awesome. You can tell the guys that have played. But you know who's really good? Ryan Pinder. Ryan Game 7 Pinder, we call him. Ryan Game 7 Pinder. Every shift is his last shift. And he plays it hard. He is an awesome teammate. I would just look up. I'd grab the puck. I'd say, all right, where's Laz? Where's Pinder? And give him the puck. Now, we lost in the final. I can't remember how many teams were involved. We lost in the final to a team that had, you ready? Aaron Volpatti on it. And he had like all of his buddies from like college playing and stuff on the team. Like they didn't move quick, and I think probably half of them were all either hungover or buzzed. But you can just like when you played in the show, like there's only like, and we're a bunch of hacks outside of Laz and Pinder. It was it was pretty eye-opening. We had them 7-7 right to the half. I'm like, okay, yeah, you know what? We're hanging in there with these guys.
Yeah, we've got a shot.
And then the second half started.
Yeah,
no, we didn't have a shot. And every now and then, like Volpatti would like just do something. You're like, oh yeah, dude played in the NHL. Oh yeah, Henry Volpatti, yeah, Brown, yeah, he played in Washington Capitals. Yeah, okay, yeah, I see it, Hershey. Yeah, all right,
I had that experience once playing in. I played in a summer league out there in Stouffville. I was playing in it for a while, and one of the times we show up, we're skating around. I'm like, holy, who's that mutant over there on the other team?
Who was
I go skate by and warm up, cross the line, and as he goes past me, I went, oh shoot. Mason Marchman skating behind me. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing out here?
Well,
we were tie game until 2 minutes left. They get the puck off the draw, and I think that they had told him like kind of what you told Laz, hey, go. And he basically steals the puck off the guy off the draw, turns around, burns down the ice, goes out past the defender, rips it over the goalie's shoulder under the bar, and it was like, all right, okay, the game's over. Thanks for coming. He hadn't really done anything to that point, but you could tell if he wanted to at any moment, it was there.
Just let him out of the cage and go.
Yeah.
Like, we need a goal.
And then they put him back in.
Don't worry about like playing and making everyone feel like they got their touches in. I made a contribution. Like, no. Just enough of the cute stuff. Just go. Want to mention Jasper too. That was my first time there. I don't think I've ever been to Jasper before, Zach, but it is gorgeous. 3.5, 4 hours north of Edmonton, ravaged by horrible fires last summer, and you can see the damage as you're driving through. And it is very much a community that is rebuilding. There's a lot of support. Whether it is community support or mental health support or business support, housing rebuilds going on. Tourism is going to be a major part of how Jasper rebuilds. I know in our small, tiny way, the pond hockey tournaments that we're a part of, helps to sort of reinforce and bring a lot more people to Jasper. There was an American team that were there first time ever in Canada, ends up in Jasper. Yeah, it was so cool. A lot of great people there. And it's a wonderful community that are in the process of rebuilding. Jasper Park Lodge is absolutely gorgeous. I know that a lot of people have been to Banff, been to Lake Louise. And Jasper's quite north, but just a beautiful part of the country. Loved it. And there's something really, honestly, Zach, I don't know if you had this experience playing pond hockey and all you can see around you are enormous mountains. Is the coolest thing in the world. The weather was great. The organization of everything was fantastic. It was run really well. Congratulations to everybody who put that together. And listen, we wish the best in any way we can help out as Jasper continues to rebuild. I know I can pretty much speak for all of us here at the Nation Network and Daily Faceoff that we're glad to be part of it and we could help out in our own special way. And the pond hockey was great, and we'll be back next year to try to get that title back. Because last year, Zach, this team won the whole thing, and they added me, and they lost. But last two,
yes, exactly. That's the thing. They added last two. Jeff, I'm glad you had a good experience. You had a good
who
time
else a good
out
player?
There. You know
who else a good player? Tyler Yaremchuk. Tyler can move. Yeah, he's a good. And I was talking to him after. I'm like, so where did you play? I'm figuring he played some junior somewhere, maybe some tier 2 or anything, right? He goes, I only played house league. I never played. I'm like, you should see him skate. Really good skater, puck control, all of it. Had a spectacular wipeout in the first game and gashed up his hip.
I saw that. And then you're in there. I'm like, what did you do to him?
I did 2/3 of the square root of Sweet FA. That's what I did in the tournament this weekend. I just tried to get out of the way so my guys could rush the puck. Had a great time. Everybody did, I think, a tremendous job. We got a lot of social media, pumped a lot of it out, and there's more coming. Every time I went back to the party cabin, Yaremchuk was doing another podcast. I swear that guy must have did 10 podcasts this weekend. Every time I was out there, I'm like, holy smokes, Yaremchuk, you're a machine. So that was great. Everyone had a wonderful time. I highly recommend, whether it's in the winter, if you're into skiing, this great pond hockey tournament, in the summers as well. Jasper is spectacular, a beautiful part of our country. And as they rebuild, I hope you can be a part of it by considering going to visit Jasper. It's really it's strongly encouraged from this little corner, and you won't regret it. Thanks to Eric Tulsky for stopping by. Any final thoughts on Tulsky there, Zach?
Yeah, other GMs, if they see his name come up, should be weary to pick up the phone.
Don't answer the phone.
yeah.
Don't answer the phone.
That is a smart man with an incredible hockey mind who is he's got a lot of balls. I mean, just hearing him talk about the trade, how it went down, and then when you asked him about, what actually I loved, one of the sneaky favorite parts of that, you asked him about when he was able to enjoy it when the work was over, and he just smirked and said the work was still going on, or the work is still going on. And I was like,
that's him.
This guy, man, that's terrifying.
His line to LeBron in The Athletic was something along the lines of, we still, we don't have the 20 best players in the NHL on our roster, so I still have work to do. Like that, how do I get the 20 best guys on this team? That's how Tulsky is wired. Again, 3 general managers go to a bar, one pours vodka shots for the other 2 while drinking smart water. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Zach. As Zach mentioned a couple of moments ago as well. Greg Wyshynski back tomorrow for MVSW Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed the Eric Tulsky interview. More GMs on the horizon. We'll do that for you here, certainly. So thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the games tonight. Thanks to FanDuel for everything you do to help sponsor this program and keep it going. And once again, thanks to the entire community of Jasper and the Jasper Park Lodge. That was a tremendous weekend. I will not forget. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the sheet. Don't forget, Morning Cup of Hockey tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. Daily Faceoff live at noon. This show at 3 Eastern. All right? And our other properties. Barn Burner is outstanding. Oilers Nation every day. Sakaris and Price, you heard from Jason York earlier on from the Coming In Hot podcast. So no shortage of content here. Check it out. Enjoy it. We're back tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern for the sheet. Talk to you then. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.